Hello, my friends. Hello, and welcome once again to Stately Vaughan Manor, where Roger and I have returned because it is that time of year. That time of year where I have to look back on my reading and decide what were my favorite books, my top 10 favorite books from the previous year. Right, Rogers? It's that time. So, my good pal Roger, of course, has joined me today, and also future Roger has returned for another visit. Our favorite prophet of doom, future Roger. And I have to say, future Roger, all your dire predictions have come to pass. 2025 has been absolutely terrible. You were right. And as future Roger says, it's only going to get worse from here. Yay. But the stuff I read this year has been pretty good. So let's talk about my top 10 favorite books that I read in 2025. So for my top 10 favorite books, I'm only counting the books that I read for the first time in 2025. I'm not counting any rereads. Including rereads, how many books have I read this year? I've read so far 113 books. I've read 113 books so far in 2025. Now, 2025 is not over yet, but I don't think I'm going to finish the book I'm reading right now, which is Amu by Herman Melville. I probably won't finish this until 2026. That's my guess. I could be wrong, but I'm just guessing I probably won't finish Amu. I will probably finish The Amazing Spider-Man Epic Collection Volume 1. I probably will finish this. That's a reread though. I've read all of these stories before. So I probably will finish out the year at 114 books. That's my guess, which is not bad for me. But let's get into the top 10. What were my favorite top 10 books of 2025? Well, let's see. Going 10 to 1, as we do in this sort of list, I will use Roger and Roger's magic powers to make the books appear here on the screen because I'm too lazy to go and actually find all of these books again. Number 10, People of the Mist by H. Rider Haggard. People of the Mist. I really enjoyed this. Another fantastic Lost World novel from H. Rider Haggard, who is the king of that kind of thing. Fantastic adventure writer, H. Rider Haggard, and reading this wonderful book helped me decide to join along with the reading event in January, Haggard in January, which is a reading event created by Randy Ray, the bookish Texan. So I'll be reading more Haggard coming in January, but this book, it was great. I highly recommend this. H. Rider Haggard, tremendously influential adventure writer, and this book shows why. Great book. So that was number 10, which brings me to number 9, Robber's Roost by Zane Grey. This was an excellent Zane Grey novel, and out of all of the Zane Grey books that I've read, this one might be my favorite. It might be. It has great characters, complex characters. The hero of this book is kind of a villain, but kind of a hero. So shades of gray going on in Robber's Roost. Excellent Western novel. I read this for June on the Range, and it was one of the best things I read that month in June, and one of the best books I read all year. Definitely, really, really enjoyed Robber's Roost. And who doesn't love that fantastic 1970s photo cover? I mean, that's amazing. Which brings us to number 8, The Best of the Spirit by Will Eisner. I was really, really impressed by this. Shockingly, I've never read The Spirit before until I read this book. When I was, growing up and reading comic books and going to the comic book shop, I never found any old issues of The Spirit. And so this was a comic book I heard a lot about, but I never read. And I never got around to reading it until this year when I when I read The Best of the Spirit by Will Eisner. And from what I hear, this isn't even the best stuff that Eisner has done. But I was pretty impressed by this book and by this character. I loved it. So yeah, The Best of the Spirit by Will Eisner. This was published by DC Comics, actually, and I guess they still have the license to the Spirit. I'm not sure. But this book was awesome. But what can top the Spirit? What could be better than the Spirit, guys? Weasels! It's Weasels Ripped My Flesh. This is a book edited by Robert Dyes, Wyatt Doyle, and Josh Allen Friedman. And this was my introduction to men's adventure pulp stories. I had never read men's adventure pulp before. It's just something I missed. Growing up, I grew up in the 1970s and the 1980s. So in the 70s, when I was a kid, it's possible I could have seen these magazines around because they were still being published in the 70s or into the 70s, but I can't remember ever seeing them. So this is my first time reading this stuff, and it's amazing. It's just, this is just a great book. So much fun. Fun, extremely pulpy men's adventure stuff. I mean, who doesn't want to read about weasels attacking people and turtles attacking people and crazy war stories and everything else? Highly recommend this one. Weasels Rip My Flesh. It was awesome. Which brings us to number 6, which was Legion of Space. The Legion of Space by Jack Williamson. I really like this one. So I like Jack Williamson a lot. And I like Jack Williamson's old pulpy stuff. And this is... it could be the ultimate pulpy space opera adventure story. With the Legion, and they go to this incredibly... the Legionnaires go to an incredibly nightmarish planet full of Lovecraftian horrors and a lot of other stuff going on in this book. It's so much fun. It's a lot of fun, The Legion of Space by Jack Williamson. And I somehow never read it. And there are other Legion books in this series. I guess this is the first book in a series. So, and I have a couple of those books, I believe, at least. So yeah, I'll definitely read more from Jack Williamson and the Legion. This was awesome. Which brings us to book number 5, The Voyage of the Space Beagle by A.E. Van Vogt. Another tremendously fun pulpy adventure science fiction, and it was tremendous fun again. Very pulpy science fiction, and it was a fix-up novel. So this is actually a few different short stories written by Van Vogt, made into a novel. And a couple of the stories in here were highly influential on the film Alien, so much so that A.E. Van Vogt sued the producers of Alien, I believe, and won, I think he won. He should have won, because reading the book, it's like, yeah. It's great. This is great pulpy stuff. Voyage of the Space Beagle by A.E. Van Vogt. Highly recommended. If you like old science fiction, it's awesome. It's awesome. Which brings us to number 4. Number 4, By the Gun by Richard Matheson. So this is a collection of Western stories by Richard Matheson. And it's great. It's a great collection of Western stories. So Richard Matheson, who is more famously known for his science fiction, fantasy, horror stuff, one of the most important writers on the television show The Twilight Zone. He also wrote The Shrinking Man, and he also wrote I Am Legend, which is my favorite book by Richard Matheson. He wrote actually a lot of stuff. And he also wrote Westerns, and his Western stories are dynamite. He wrote Journal of the Gun Years, which was a fantastic novel. But this series, or this collection of short stories, is great, and I highly recommend it. It was published at least once in paperback, so I don't think it's particularly hard to find. But it probably was Well, it definitely was the best thing I read for June on the Range this year. So yeah, By the Gun by Richard Matheson, which brings me to book number 3, The Forever War by Joe Haldeman. It could be one of the greatest science fiction war stories ever. I mean, it's really a fascinating book. And Haldeman was in the Vietnam War, I believe. And you could see a lot of his experience and a lot of his feelings about that war and that experience in this novel. And it's just an incredible science fiction story. It's also an excellent adventure story. This one rockets right along, and it's just a great novel, and certainly a great science fiction novel. And it certainly could be one of the greatest science fiction war stories ever, for sure. Which brings me to book number 2, Robert E. Howard, The Life and Times of a Texas Author by Willard M. Oliver. Robert E. Howard, my favorite writer of all time, who is not on this list because I've read pretty much everything by Robert E. Howard already. But this biography is really, really excellent. I think it will probably go down as the go-to scholarly biography about Robert E. Howard. It's packed full of great information. A lot of stuff in here I didn't know. And there's a lot of stuff that I knew, but I didn't really appreciate as much as I did when reading this book. Just a great piece of scholarship and a fantastic biography, and tremendously readable. I mean, it's really fascinating. So yeah, incredible biography of Robert E. Howard, the greatest pulp writer of all time. And I couldn't recommend this book highly enough. So yeah, definitely Robert E. Howard, The Life and Times of a Texas Author. But my favorite book of the year is This Immortal by Roger Zelazny. I really love this one. This Immortal by Roger Zelazny. Roger Zelazny has become one of my favorite writers since reading the Amber series. I haven't finished that yet. And he's written so much other really interesting fantasy science fiction books, and a lot of those I haven't read yet. And this was one I hadn't read yet, but I was really impressed. It has a plot that's just like a Tarzan novel, but this novel is full of great science fiction ideas, and again, another story that rockets right along, an excellent adventure story, and it's just tremendous fun to read. And Zelazny always delivers, it seems like. Every time I read a book by Roger Zelazny, I really enjoy it. I'm sure there are some stinkers out there from Zelazny, but I haven't come across one yet. I've liked them all that I've read, and this was great. This is a great book. It won the Hugo. I believe it was the Hugo that it won along with Dune. I guess this was a tie with Dune, which shows you how good it is right there. I don't think it was better than Dune, but it's an excellent book. So yeah, This Immortal by Roger Zelazny. It's number 1 of 2025. So there you go. There's my list of the top 10 books. I hear 2026 is going to be terrible. Is that true, future Roger? It's going to be awful. But we will survive it somehow. Roger will survive on a diet of human flesh and blood. But, we'll survive. And I'm looking forward to reading some fantastic books. This year has been really, really good. There's only been maybe 1 or 2 books this year that I didn't think were particularly good. Almost all of what I read this year has been really, really excellent. So I'm hoping for another fantastic reading year in 2026. I will catch you next time.